Love podcasts, hate nonsense. The PoliticsJOE podcast, ladies and gentlemen. An understated clap this Monday morning.
As we await the arrival
of the Prince.
The Prince. He's going to be late because he's been off watching Princess Kate in her St. Patrick's Day green coat.
Oh.
He's been on the Mall cheering.
Yeah. As only a Rangers fan could. They won at the weekend, didn't they, Sean? Yeah.
Tell you who's not winning.
Tell me.
Mark Carney.
Straight to it, Ava Santina. I love it. Tell me.
In his first couple of days, the new Canadian Prime Minister, you'd have thought he would have been off with their largest trading partner, the US. But alas.
I think things have soured a bit between the Canadians and the Americans.
Well, it depends what perspective you look at it from, right? Because for Canada, yeah, you could argue that they're experiencing a nice uptick in nationalism. You can now get the Canadiacano rather than the Americano.
That famously goes quite well for nation states, I've found.
Sure. What, an isolationist policy?
Well, just a little uptick in nationalism.
Yeah.
Just a little healthy bump of nationalism.
So they're snorting the bump of nationalism up there. Made in Canada has really come back. That's
so back.
Yeah, that's back. So I guess what they're doing is just pretty much drinking maple syrup and then pounding each other with all the steel they now can't sell into America.
I think we will actually talk about the politics of this in a second, but I saw some clips of a recent ice hockey match between the Canadians and the Americans. And it was whilst all this sort of Trump stuff was starting to kick off. And I don't know what they call it. It's not kick off, is it, in ice hockey? Puck down? When they drop puck.
I don't know.
Right, well, the game started.
Okay.
And the puck had not been struck, and immediately two of the lads threw their gloves off, which is, we're going to have a fight.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. And then they
because in some sports you have to have gloves on to fight.
Famously.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's considered unsportsmanlike. I think it's sort of governed by the unofficial rules, and one of which is you have to throw your gloves off if you intend to scrap.
I know an ice hockey player.
Do you?
In the UK.
Tough, hard fucker.
It's hard to say. I don't know. I think they leave it for the ice.
Right.
Save it for the ice.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to where we were.
Please.
So from Canada's perspective, they've had a wonderful uptick in a good pegging of nationalism because of the steel. That's what they're using it for now.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't feel, I suppose, that he has to meet with Mark Carney because, of course, Canada is the 51st state. So when Trump became president, he didn't go around meeting every single senator, did he? I
suppose so. Yeah. Yeah.
So
where is he going?
Mark Carney.
Yeah.
Over to Paris.
Oh.
He's gone to meet with Macron.
Magnifique. Très bien, Monsieur Carney.
A little de petit croissant.
And his language in some of his speeches, he was like invoking British heritage and stuff.
Mark Carney.
Yeah. Which is
I'd be surprised if that was Macron.
Yeah, I don't think Manu's been up to that, but Mark Carney certainly has. He's certainly been taking a more European and acknowledging sort of Britain's colonial history with Canada.
Do you know what that reminds me of? When I'm on panels, I'm not a foreign policy expert. I never have claimed to be, right? I do Westminster.
Yeah.
And if they ask me a foreign policy question, I always just talk about what I know the Westminster reaction is, because that's something I actually know and understand. Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England, he's just doing that game. That's what he's doing. he's like,
this is what I know.
You've asked me a question about Canada. I'm going to talk to you about the UK perspective.
The politics of the UK. It's a bold strategy, Con. Let's see if it pays off.
Have you guys considered quantitative easing?
Okay, so Canada is turning to Europe. Tariffs continuing. Tariffs being imposed, as you mentioned. Steel.
God, you should see how Laura spells tariff. She's never ever spelt it right.
It's spelt correctly today.
Yeah, you know who did these notes?
Right, got you. Can we talk a little bit about sort of the shift in economic thinking and to what extent we buy. Is Donald Trump knowingly, and his administration knowingly, departing from neoliberal economics and, a belief in globalization and a belief in the more trade, freer trade, rising tide raises all ships economics towards a more mercantilist, a more...
Ooh.
Well, I guess...
We don't really get into sort of that's great, isn't it? Getting back in sort of... What's the sort of singular for that? Mercantile?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I always thought it was mercantilism, but is it mercantilism?
Shit. Have I got it wrong?
No. I
would usually defer to law on matters of that nature.
I have terrible pronunciation with words I haven't seen before.
Well, look...
But heard out loud. Do you know what I
think that's how Americans say it. So, and
mercantilism.
I guess, and because we're talking about America, maybe that's why. But yeah, I suppose it could be either. But I don't know how much of what Trump is doing is knowing, if that makes sense. Like what's Besant trying to do? What's Stephen Moran trying to do? Are they trying to sort of induce a sort of global reset of global financial and trade systems? Okay, possibly those two might be. Does Trump know that? Like, to what extent, when we're talking about this shift and this a hyper-aggressive tariffs on everyone, protectionist, and sort of their broader policy aims, is there a guiding aim to what Trump is trying to do? Do you think, or do you think his quite vain, his quite self-serving, his almost relational and transactional approach to foreign relations, and it's just a product of he wants to be able to whack tariffs on people and then cut deals that either increase them or decrease them? I don't know if you've seen the stuff about the Mar-a-Lago Accord, that is kind of, they're trying to put some ideological shape on what he's doing, but I don't know if he is actually guided by any ideology. Do you see what I'm saying?
I wouldn't want to suggest that I'm inhabiting the palace of his mind, because it is a palace.
Yeah.
But would I like to see some sort of still...
Here he is, the king, Ed Campbell. Can I get an amen?
Fresh, isn't it? Should I come in a different costume each week? Where's Ed this week?
I want to say, Ed...
Do you know why he's wearing that?
What, the bike helmet?
Yeah.
I assume he rode a bike here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you know why specifically he's wearing it?
Tell me.
He's under instruction by his girlfriend. He has to wear it.
Yeah.
So I think he's walked in wearing it as like a...
Here, there's video proof.
Yeah.
There's video proof.
Please don't make me sleep at the bed again.
You have to wear a cycling helmet in London. You have to.
I think full stop, to be honest, like a condom.
Okay, parking that matter for a moment. I actually would say outside of London, I think you can get away with it. It would be not recommended.
I don't think you should say things like that. You don't want to get any of the streets pregnant. You know what I mean?
Always wear protection. But in London, you're essentially ride a bike in London for long enough, you're guaranteed to get knocked off at some point. You will have an accident.
I've had a long run.
You've had altercations.
Some bitch, actually. Do you know down by the Betsy Trotswood?
Yep.
Famous for Stanley Tucci's local, of course.
Yep. I've seen him in there for sure.
There's dangerous roadworks around there at the moment.
Yes, there are.
More complicated of a system
than
usual. And this woman in a car, I was going down, it's my right of way, I'm going straight. She just launched out of the junction. And did not look at all. Actually, I think she did look. That was the weirdest bit about it.
Fucker.
That's Ava.
But yeah. Anyway, but what we like, we can't drive.
Car beats bike, silly girl.
Saudi Arabia, most ridiculous thing they ever did, letting us slot on the road. You should see it over here.
What's the Saudi stance on female cyclists?
Probably anti.
If it's a tandem and a man's at the front, is it okay?
Do you know what? It's probably going to be something quite draconian, like they have to side saddle it or something. Do you know what I mean? Like
unicycle's fine.
You're only allowed to pedal with one foot.
Yeah.
Just penny farthings.
Anyway, the point being, I missed her by about an inch. Like I'm not like a line bike is really hard to stop.
Yeah,
they're really heavy.
Got some momentum, haven't they?
Well, it's not even they're just like they're not.
It is tough.
Very aerodynamic,
though.
are they?
The idea that you would sort of have a helmet that you carried around with you to use when you line biked, I think it's a bit gimpy, isn't it?
What the hell?
They're going to be in the comments that going mad. Can we go back to the steel?
You started this.
So what we were talking about, Ed, was the
Yes.
steel. And we were talking about Trump imposing all of these tariffs.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
And Ollie was asking whether he thought this, whether the mind palace of Trump saw this as sort of like a mercantilist policy that would be, that's very well thought through, or whether this is self-serving.
You've come in cold. Right, you've come in cold, but what I'm going to say to you is, do you think Trump has a cohesive international economic policy, or do you think people that try to describe it, as I just did, as mercantilist?
If you'd like me to begin with the point I was going to answer with while you think, that would be fine.
I'm going hot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go in.
I'm going guns blazing. I think he has a very protectionist economic philosophy, and also he's incredibly immature. So I think he does respond. He's incredibly derail. I think it is both. I think it's like, well, this is what I'm doing. Oh, I'm doing it twice.
And fuck you, Mark Carney.
There's no surprises. Like, we all knew tariffs were coming. 200% tariffs. That's new.
On the alcohol, that's kind of mad.
I think that's something that he didn't think of before. And he's responding to... I don't think he came into the office and was like, I'm going to put 200% tariffs on French wine, because I don't think... Well, maybe he did think that, I guess, but then maybe...
But he also hates California, doesn't he? So why would he want to prioritise Californian wine over...
I bet, Alabama
French
has some
wine.
great vineyards now because of climate shift.
Is it not too hot, though?
Maybe it's cooled down.
Too sweet.
The great cooling of Alabama.
Are all Americans just drinking dessert wine?
Ava, what were you going to say?
No, I think the steel policy is really sensible. Like, if you look at the knock-on effect of what it's done to the UK, as I said to you earlier, steel tariffs on the UK, the problem there is that China then comes and dumps all of their cheap shite steel in our market, and that's awful for people here, for manufacturers here. I cannot understand why the Labour government, when they got into power, they had an opportunity to renege on every policy that the Conservatives had with Port Talbot. They had an opportunity to cancel the payments that they were giving to the billionaire who runs it for his own fun and games, and actually have proper British steel being made and supply the rest of the country. And instead they were like, nah, just open the floodgates a little bit more, and also put 2,000 people out of work.
Yeah, there is... I think there's two things I'd like to say here. One is that there is a small degree of collective bedwetting around steel tariffs, which pretends that there was not a single tariff placed on steel production in the global economy until Donald Trump discussed doing it, which is wrong. Biden for sure, and the EU and others, tariffs get used all the time in the international economy.
And he was subsidising the economy. He was subsidising the steel industry, Biden. All of the programs that he put in just as before he left was to subsidise that industry. Absolutely.
However, I would say that the Trump administration's use of tariffs is obviously a bit of an escalation, and the risk of sort of global trade war is something that has so far been avoided. What do you think it is in aid of? What do you think he's pursuing? Do you think it is a resetting of the global financial system? Do you think it is just he likes doing it? No, and I don't mean that in a childish way, but because of his sort of his love of a deal and his love of a transaction and his love of being able to say it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, or in some cases, possibly the withdrawal of security guarantees. When I'm thinking about Western Europe, that Trump is saying hard power is back, and if you want to do business with America, you have to do business with me, the great deal maker.
I wonder if it's to do with his campaign or his base in the post-industrial towns. If he's the one that manages to reopen the steel mills, the coal mines, and he will shore up support for MAGAism forever. If Donald Trump brings back what coal mining to Kentucky, that is a really good, strong power base for. Do we think he's going to respect term limits? Is that something that we imagine he's going to respect, or that's a really powerful base to have in your hold for the MAGA movement?
The Rust Belt. Have you heard about our Rust Belt?
In Port Talbot, of course. Yeah.
Who described us?
That's what I'm actually. Labour should have gone after our Rust Belt by doing that. If he's the one to end the decline of American manufacturing, then that's unbelievable for him. And maybe he's the only one crazy enough to try.
Well, yeah, and I guess that's the thing, is crazy, because what they're talking about, what they are doing, is such a departure from well, yeah, really, since at least the end of the Cold War, if not earlier, probably go back to Bretton Woods, it is such a radical departure from neoliberal economic thinking for them essentially to say, we're going to try and, we believe the dollar to be overvalued, and as a result of which, that harms American manufacturing. And obviously, there's a slight elephant in the room, which is that sort of the Chinese economy is now the global leader in manufacturing industry, and it might not necessarily make that much sense for the Americans to try and compete with them there. But say
you can compete with them, can't you? Because the competition is that you create a better product. It might be more expensive, but it's better.
Well, I think their argument would go that it's too expensive because the dollar is overvalued, and therefore we are going to seek to devalue the dollar. Already hard because obviously it's sort of the global reserve currency. We're going to seek to devalue the dollar via a combination of tariffs, via a combination of collaboration and multilateralism with our allies, which, for anyone who's been watching how America is conducting itself, might realise they're not doing a great job of being particularly multilateral. But nonetheless, you help us to do this, we'll provide you with security guarantees, we'll provide you with, we might cut some tariffs for you, etc. And therefore, we devalue the dollar and we can reignite American manufacturing.
Do you know who would be really good at assisting him in devaluing the dollar?
Liz Truss.
The leader of the 51st state, Mark Carney. Mark Carney, very good at, well, I'm just speculating here, but what he might advise Trump to do. Have you considered leaving your largest trading bloc?
How does the US leave itself?
Printing more money.
DC goes independent.
Yeah. What do you think would be the two? Which bits would he save? He'd save Mar-a-Lago, so he'd probably save Florida.
Yeah.
They quite like Texas now at the moment, don't they? And then maybe just Capitol Hill. Oh, he likes New York as well, doesn't
California's money, surely. Even if you don't like California, you like their money.
I reckon he could annex California.
Annex?
He could just be like, you just stay over there with your Air One smoothies. What do you actually offer us?
Have you seen that Gavin Newsom has started doing a podcast?
Yes, and he's just interviewing like right-wing headbangers.
Yeah, big time.
What's he trying? I completely understand being like, you should not necessarily platforming these people, like engage with these people. I don't. If you're this person, if you're their political enemy, I don't really understand what he's gaining from it.
Probably a lot of money, Ed. I would have thought. That he's probably getting paid for it.
It seems to be his own product.
So I
Really?
think.
Yeah.
I think. Well, I think. That, okay. What do I think? What do I think he gains? What do I think he gains from it? I think in the same way that you can make the argument about Rory Stewart and the rest of his politics. Mm-hmm. If you are a political figure, particularly one who's currently in office, and you have an audience of, I don't know the listenership numbers of the Gavin Newsom podcast, but let's say you break 1 million downloads on an episode.
Yeah.
They're not going to break 1 million downloads on an episode.
I don't think they will. But nonetheless, that's 1 million people listening to you in conversation for an hour. People don't traditionally listen to politicians speak for an hour.
But it's not, Rory Stewart's not interviewing Sargon of Akkad.
No.
Oh, but he didn't. I mean, they did go in. What? Hang on.
My man in Syria.
Yeah, he's not Sargon of Akkad.
Well, there has been some massacring over the weekend.
No, there is.
I think
He's a global leader.
The Alawites have been having a bad time.
And he was,
he was a moderate jihadist.
Yes, but he's not
less moderate this weekend.
he's
mask off.
Psych, it's me. I did used to be an ISIS.
We hate Alawites.
Yeah, pigs.
I mean, he's been there at pretty much every massacre for quite some time. Yes. Okay, look, we need to talk about what's going on in the UK.
Okay.
But before we do that, I do think it is worth noting that a wonderful parallel that our Chancellor and Elon Musk have. Elon Musk is cutting Social Security. Rachel Reeves was originally going to go after PIP payments, but it now looks like they've doubled down after a cabinet meeting in which there was apparently a little row. There was some contesting between a few cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister. All of this speculation, by the way, was quelled by Wes Streeting over the weekend, who, during an interview with Laura Kuenssberg, said multiple times that he didn't even know what the policy was on cutting welfare, and it was total rubbish, and that actually no one had even spoken about it in cabinet, which is weird because I did speak to someone who was in the cabinet meeting who told me that there had been.
Mm. It's unlike Wes Streeting, isn't it? Wouldn't lie.
But I don't know. Maybe the person who said that to me, maybe they lied.
Maybe they were lying. Maybe they're both lying.
Do you think Starmer would lie to you?
It was Keir. Yeah.
I thought this was. I thought this was really interesting because I was talking to another Labour advisor, they're not a backbench advisor, last week, and he pointed out to me that he'd contacted the Commons Library, the House of Commons Library, to ask them if there would needed to be a procedural vote. Could she just cut PIP payments without it actually having to go to a vote? And then that has sort of played out really interestingly in the last few days, because Labour MPs have suddenly realised that they may have to actually walk through the division lobby. Ooh. So they may actually have to, instead of being able to just sort of hide under the shadow of Rachel Reeves making a cut, they would actually have to walk through the yes or no lobby on cutting disability payments. Yeah. And that has shifted the dial.
And that would be interesting for the next election if there's going to be more independent candidates standing in their constituencies. People, potential independent alliance members standing to, like, we saw like people from the Workers' Party and the Green Party doing pretty well, almost unseating West Streeting, for instance, having a big billboard that says this person voted for cuts to disabled people isn't a great look.
Massively, and particularly in the context of a resurgent Atlanticist, nationalist, populist right. There we go. Fucking hell, that's a way to describe a political grouping, where people like Steve Bannon on Gavin Newsom's podcast are very pro Medicaid, are very pro social security, and actually one of the great sort of battles going on within the MAGA movement is between the sort of more tech bro libertarians like Musk, who want to cut these type of programs, and nationalist populists like Bannon, who understand that MAGA voters are on social security, and cutting those programs, that's going to be a big fight within the MAGA movement. I think that's relevant because increasingly the way to understand, in my opinion, this nationalist populist right shift, of which you would look to probably bracket reform within, it is increasingly a cohesive movement and an international movement. And I think if the Labour Party cuts, for example, PIP payments, other forms of disability benefit, it's something that reform could. I'm not saying they will, because I think Farage's Thatcherite tendencies not traditionally aligned in this way, but if reform does sort of pivot to that nationalist populist way a lot more, that is something that they could really make a lot of hay on, attacking Labour over.
There's an argument there, though, that Rachel Reeves' economic policy has gone to the right of Thatcher, because Thatcher might have closed the mines, but she did at least let people go on the dole. Whereas like, Rachel Reeves is like,
no dole.
Nothing.
Can I have a job? No.
The line is totally inconsistent, though, because the programme that they've been presenting to us for the last couple of months has been like, we want to get people back into work and we want to help people get back into work. Taking away someone's accessibility car, I would argue, would prevent them from getting into work. So it doesn't quite add up, right?
Yeah.
If you want to make it easier, there are a lot of people who are on, say, prescription medicines who don't feel that they can go into work, and Labour wanted to offer them job coaches and they wanted to offer them therapy to get, to help them get back into the workplace. If you cut all of the support before they're, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
What are they going to do in the interim?
Quite heterodox. Previously we had tax and spend, now we have tax and cut. It's an interest. It's in the same way, actually, the sort of Trumpian new paradigm.
May I make a point with the car?
Yeah.
You don't need the car to go to work now. Thanks to the marvels of modern technology, anyone can be a productive worker with just a headset and an internet connection.
Plug in, baby.
No, you don't worry, guys. You don't need the car to be a productive member of society, to be a cog in the capitalist machine. Don't worry. You can be part of a wonderful service economy. That'll be fulfilling.
So do you think instead of a car, they should just provide people with like a nice gaming chair?
Snacks.
Turtle
high-speed
beaches.
broadband.
But again, do you know what's interesting about what you just said? I know you were making a joke there, but that is actually the point, because about all these lines being inconsistent and the web of, or the myriad of total dichotomies, because Labour have sort of followed down the same path as the Jacob Rees-Mogg. We don't want you working from home. We'd like you back in the office to stimulate the economy and growth. But also, we're not going to help you get there anymore. So you should probably just work from home. If you have a disability, why do you need to go outside when you could just work from home? But also, you should not be working from home. You should be working from the office. Yeah. How on earth is prep going to function if you're sitting on your fat arse, not working?
There's oxygen inside in there.
You either log onto the company portal and work on a remote desktop, or you're watching YouTube, but you do not go outside. The fresh air is not for you.
If I see you outside, I will set an XL bully on you.
Do you know what? They could just sort of take people's brains out, couldn't they, and put them in jars? Maybe that would work instead.
They'd love that.
Yeah.
This has turned very quickly into something I abhor. Of just being like, well, this is Starmer's plan. It's to make us all brains.
There's a Treasury advisor right now writing all of this down. Gaming chairs.
Quiet Bat People, Secret Bat People. We only have a minute left of the episode.
Ugh. I feel I was here for 5 minutes of this.
Yeah, you were flying visit. The Flying Campbell, the Flying Scotsman.
Would you be interested in another observation that this Labour backbencher gave me last week that I actually probably should have talked about at the time and I forgot?
Can't wait for this.
He said to me he wasn't actually sure that they were going to pursue the PIP cuts because he thought at that moment in time the spending review already had gone off to the Office of Budget Responsibility. So the savings wouldn't have been factored in. So he said either the savings had come back from the OBR and there wasn't enough, they'd miscalculated, or this was almost like a sort of shadow creep. It was like, let's say something truly abhorrent, let's leak something truly abhorrent so that it sort of covers up the rest of the cuts that we're going to do. And then then they could cancel it and say it was all speculation and it was never actually going to happen. And they could hide under the cloak of darkness.
Media management. Yeah. Quite possibly.
Did you find any of that interesting?
I did. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah.
Would it be nice to have heard it last week?
Laura was way ahead of the curve on reform.
Oh, yeah?
Oh?
You might have heard yesterday that what was the exact quote, Laura? That the new vetting.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Brilliant. Hitler was brilliant. Brilliant speaker.
A brilliant speaker. Distinction there, obviously.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, was he wrong? Because I think that was sort of the whole point, right? That's why...
The reform messengers logged on.
Like, two things can be true at once, right?
It's not the main thing you say about Hitler, though, is it?
I think... Yeah,
no.
That's not like... So Hitler, brilliant speaker.
Yeah. Lots of autobahns.
Done.
Yeah.
But you know, like when you go into
Volkswagen,
an HR
great
meeting
car.
and they try to sort of give you like a nice, like, this is what you're doing well, before they launch into all of the bad stuff.
I don't think the bad stuff was coming from this guy.
So it's like, look, listen, Adolf, brilliant speaker, you cannot paint.
Mediocre artist, and those are the two things that I know about Adolf Hitler. Time to log on to Wikipedia.
Good to see some Holocaust denial on the Joe Rogan Experience last week as well.
Was there? Is that not just the Joe Rogan Experience?
I would say it didn't used to be like that.
Was Joe Rogan convinced in that moment in time? Or
You don't really know if he's convinced. He's convinced by whoever sat in front of him, really.
but that's what I mean. So was he convinced at that?
Yeah, well, if you don't know enough about the subject, it's hard to push back, isn't it? Which is sort of his modus operandi.
But presumably when he was saying that he was doing the sort of Holocaust denial, I do think that the American education does extend to, the Holocaust.
Well,
Yeah.
we'd like to think that about the UK system, but Wayne Hennessy did not know a single thing about World War II, and that's why he did that salute.
Exactly. We're out of time. We've got to draw a line under it, folks.
Okay.
It's a hard out for the next record in the studio.
No, I know, but that was just
Too brief.
what a moment to end on.
Yeah. End on a high. Ed,
Ollie,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Eva.
Ava, thank you.
Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
to Laura for spotting that vetting. We didn't. Can I just say what it was?
Yes.
The vetting guy.
Yeah.
The vetting guy. Laura spotted him at the Chelmsford rally
Yeah.
that we went to. He wasn't talking to the press. Laura thought that's really weird. She looked him up. He said Hitler was brilliant, and that was why.
He's learned his lesson.
Anyways,
I'm not allowed to
so Laura spotted it back in January. Just saying.
I'm not allowed
You
to
heard
talk
it
to
here
the press.
first.
Yeah. I haven't been able to speak to the press since my remarks about Hitler.
And Reformer yeah, this guy rules.
Vet our other candidates.
Well, yeah, because he'd know
can't
what
be
to
worse
look
than
for.
you. Worse than you.
Did you see-
No.
Did you see the guy who got through who looked like a Guess Who character?
Yeah.
Yes,
Verge Richichi.
He doesn't look real.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should end now, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we should end. Cool. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everybody.